city hostage, and I can't protect it. Not yesterday, not today. That's why, of course, my main goal to stop this aggression in any legal way which I can.
Prosecutor General of Ukraine, and she gives a very
we work not only with war crimes, but case against humanity, genocide, cases of aggressive war. It's all in my focus of priority. Дуже важливо для самих досліджувати це. В нас вже більше 5 тисяч відкритих проваджень саме по воєнним злочинам. For me, as a prosecutor, very important to go by criminal cases, to arrest assets and property via mechanism of criminal cases. Then the main goal of this arrest to confiscate, we want to freeze it, and then when we will have court decision, to confiscate this property to the budget of Ukraine to rebuilding our country from one side, and from other side, I want to use a mechanism of civil confiscation. What does it mean? Every ordinary Ukrainian citizen who is a victim, who lost his families, who lost his house, who lost his business, he can take this compensation via civil mechanism. That's why it's my own priority. This is the main functions of the law. Захищати, to protect and to compensate. I hope that we can do it. I named people who actually responsible. I do it very publicly every time. That's why I think that some of them in Russia Federation and the dictator Putin, they are unhappy of this.
How concerned are you for your personal safety?
I have, you saw, guys who are my bodyguards and who think about it. It's a difficult question, but I hope that we can manage it.
Okay, thank you. There is another interview with her, which I'd like to play, and then we can react honest to her statements. Chris, can you put the next one on?
Відбиває атаки ворога і допомагає потерпілим. А ще збирає докази варварської агресії Російської Федерації та її воєнних злочинів. Бо для кожного з нас справедливе покарання ворога так само важливе, як і перемога. І ми вдячні громадським і приватним ініціативам, лідерам думок і фахівцям за створення таких каналів комунікації. Однак ця важлива інформація про злочини ворога має бути акумульована і задокументована правильно. Для цього в нас існує єдиний ресурс – WarCrimes.gov.ua. Це є своєрідний доказовий хаб, з яким працюють всі правоохоронні і державні органи. Офіс Генерального прокурора продовжує координувати і в умовах воєнного стану всі необхідні інституції. На цій платформі ми об'єднуємо зусилля правоохоронців, експертів, представників громадських і міжнародних організацій, журналістів і всіх, хто хоче допомогти і фіксує звірські вбивства мирних громадян та інші злочини Російської Федерації на нашій землі. Для того, щоб зібрана інформація згодом змогла бути використана Офісом Генерального прокурора у Міжнародному кримінальному суді, в Гаазі і в українських судах, а також під час потенційних спеціальних міжнародних трибуналів, її необхідно відповідально і кваліфіковано зібрати і оформити згідно з міжнародно визнаними стандартами. Ці докази також будуть використані Міністерством закордонних справ у Міжнародному суді ООН, Міністерством юстиції в Європейському суді з прав людини. Прокуратура України вже має бойовий досвід з розслідування воєнних злочинів. Прокурори знають і вміють використовувати спеціальні механізми. Розуміють, яку саме інформацію потрібно консолідувати. Ми працюємо з базою даних IDOC, яка дозволяє здійснювати аналіз та систематизацію цих злочинів. Ця аналітична система інтегрована з ресурсом warcrimes.gov.ua. На сайті платформи покрокова інструкція для тих, хто передає свідчення про злочини Російської Федерації. Дотримуючись її, кожен зможе зробити великий вклад в нашу спільну перемогу і на юридичному фронті. Росія не вперше стукає в двері сусідніх держав своїми танками і ракетами. Офіс Генерального прокурора вже згуртував світову коаліцію заради правосуддя проти агресії Російської Федерації. 39 країн звернулись до Міжнародного кримінального суду з закликом розслідувати ситуацію в Україні. І команда Міжнародного кримінального суду вже почала це розслідування. Країни-партнери вже відкрили власні кримінальні провадження за своїм національним законодавством і допоможуть збирати покази свідків, вимушених біженців з України, які пережили жах війни. В нашій справі щодо вторгнення в Україну маємо понад 4 десятки підозрюваних високопосадовців Російської Федерації на сьогодні, а також їхніх підпівал розпалювачів війни. Їх будуть тисячі. Не кожен може взяти зброю і безпосередньо захищати державу в бойових діях. Але кожен може камінчик за камінчиком закласти підвалини фундаменту, на якому потім вибудується архітектура обвинувачення стосовно варварської Росії і її високопосадовців. Героїчні народи, ваші активні дії, зібрані матеріали, фото і відео – запорука покарання головного воєнного злочинця 21-го століття. І кожного, хто разом з його кривавим режимом вбиває нашу країну.
She referred to 39 countries that already supported the transfer of the files to the Hague. She has, there was a meeting of attorney generals of 6-7 countries, the US, Canada, and I think Switzerland, the Nordic countries have also been contributing experts and funds to get this this hub, together. And there have been TV broadcasts for citizens to contribute their evidence that they see to this war crimes website. So I think they're doing spectacularly well in terms of thinking about the future and how this will be done. And I think her earlier speech was actually at the beginning of the aggression. So, Hannes, what do you think about her ideas and how can it be supported, and how can Austria particularly be supported?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. It's of course a very important question, and I think there could be some possibilities for Austria, for Austrian authorities, and also Austrian NGOs to contribute to identify core human rights crimes committed in the Ukraine. And I think if I have a look to Germany, which is very, very active and singular active within the European Union countries to investigate crimes against humanity, core human rights crimes committed by ISIS. Yeah, in the past, in so-called Strukturverfahren. It's called Strukturverfahren. Germany is started already procedures, criminal procedures against perpetrators and collecting evidence, yeah, to identify those perpetrators and to bring them to court in Germany, because it's task of all member states of ICC to support ICC when it comes to perpetrators which are not the big bosses, so the leaders of any those core human rights crimes. Germany is quite successful in that regard. I'm not so quite convinced that similar procedures could be and should start it in Austria. I think it's much more important that we and Austrian authorities from the judiciary, but also supported by NGOs, are trying to find out, within the Ukraine community, which is now hostage here in Austria, which is living in Austria, to find witnesses of such crimes committed by the Russian army, and to invite them and to encourage them to report to responsible Austrian authorities, and to offer evidences. Yeah, so for pictures, videos, maybe they witnessed themselves murdering, etc., etc., and to be ready to act as a witness in criminal procedures wherever those procedures will take place. Yeah, before the ICC or maybe in the Ukraine. Yeah, and in that regard, I would say that also the Vienna Forum. I'm chairperson of the Vienna Forum for Democracy and Human Rights here in Vienna, and there could be the possibility that we contribute in such a sense. So to, of course, with support of Austrian authorities, to get into touch with Ukrainian people who could be witnesses and could provide evidences on such human rights violations committed by Russia in the Ukraine. Yeah, so this would be my proposal, and would be, I think, necessary and important to have a talk to the Ministry of Justice, what they are thinking about this possibility and this offer. Yeah, maybe also from your side, Michael, and your organization and Amnesty and other organizations, we of course could contribute in such a sense.
Good. I have tried to have a good discussion with the Ministry of Justice. It has not yet succeeded. I have spoken with the Ukrainian representative at the United Nations, and he, of course, is very happy that we are starting these preliminary discussions. So I think things are open, but I think there's also, there's been some skepticism. Austria is not one of the leaders of the in the Commission on the Commission on Corruption and Criminal Justice, and I found it very difficult to move anything forward. The Americans, of course, and the Nordics are active, and in the first plenary speeches, people spoke about the war crimes, but whether they will do anything at this session seems to be difficult for them. So, I mean, all of the commissions, the Women's Commission, the Human Rights Council, ECOSOC itself, all of them could take a position, and perhaps they could be working together under a specialized agency. And volunteers are needed. So I can imagine people who can build computer setups would be very appreciated. And of course, we have Ukrainians who can speak their language, and they're here with us too. So, okay, I think
I may add the following. What about to try together, your organization, Vienna Forum, Amnesty, Liga für die Menschenrechte, etc., to try to talk to Al-Masadic, to the ministry, and I can also share with the ministry our experience from the past in the 90s, when I and the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute of Human Rights started a project, a project to investigate, and to try to get evidences about the so-called ethnic cleansing operations committed in Bosnia.
Yeah.
And we were really very, very successful. We got a strong commitment and support by Mr. Goldstone and the chief prosecutor, and we were invited, and we got a funding here from Austria, funding to take interviews with nearly 1,000 victims and people who came to Austria, which were deported to Austria, and we. Based on these interviews, we could report on the ethnic cleansing operations in a third region of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and this became then afterwards a part of the final report of Mr. Sharif Baziuni to the Security Council. So our report was an annex. So that could be a good example for Al-Masadic and the ministry that the scientific community, NGOs can contribute to take now all necessary measures to find out and to get evidences about the crimes committed, by interviewing people who are now living, Ukrainian people who are now living in Austria.
Good. So, I think Friedrich will now, Judge Forsthuber of the Criminal Court of Austria has also had some experience and knowledge of recent attempts at getting war criminals.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being invited. Today in the morning we had an event at the Ministry of Justice talking about the so-called collecting evidences of war crimes of the Nazis and transitional justice. Transitional justice means justice after the fall of the dictatorship, and we had processes in Germany, in Austria, concerning these war crimes of the Nazis. And what is very important is collecting evidences as soon as it is possible. And now we have the advantage of modern technique. We have videos, we have handy videos, we have even the possibility to view war crimes from the sky. There are many videos I've seen in television about presumptive war crimes, and I think it's a very good idea, not only in Ukraine, to collect, to help people, or to bring people to collect these evidences. As Hannes Stretter said, we could do it in every country where these people went to help them with interviews, to find out what they have seen, which war crimes they could witness, and also collecting the videos on their mobile phones. I think it would be an interesting project to collect it and to preserve it for future procedures, and therefore we should help these people. Many of them have, of course, traumata. We should help them to give this evidence to a very early time, and all these collected evidences should be sent to the ICC. Then they could prepare at a very early moment some procedures against persons who committed these war crimes. And what is also important is that people who, for instance, members of the army of Russia, they should know that if they commit war crimes, they could be brought to trial, and they could get a verdict, even if not now, perhaps 10 years later, 20 years later, that they cannot be safe, that one day they will be found guilty. And this is important, that also people who in my idea, also people who work as for instance, soldiers, as judges, whatever, as part of a dictatorship, they should know if they don't act in a proper way, they could be found guilty afterwards. And this is also perhaps an aspect that nowadays could be fulfilled in a better way than it was after 1945.
Oksana, would you like to contribute to the discussion right now? Hello? Oksana, do you hear me? You were invited to join. No? Well, we have another Ukrainian in Austria, Karolina Komposh, who also wants to go over here.
I'm sorry, if you mentioned Alexandra Matvichuk, I'm ready to speak. Maybe I didn't hear properly.
Okay. I'm sorry, I apologize. My Ukrainian is a zero, but I did say Oksana. So,
Alexandra.
Alexandra.
Yes, Alexandra.
Okay, I apologize.
Not problem. So I will start with that point that I'm very grateful to have opportunity to speak in this discussion. My name is Alexandra Matvichuk. I'm human rights defender, head of the Center for Civil Liberties. Since the new wave of large-scale Russian invasion, we have resumed the work of our initiative Euromaidan SOS and brought up several hundreds of volunteers to document war crimes. And together with other human rights organizations, we work in the initiative Tribunal for Putin. What are main conclusions for current moment? First, Russia is using war crimes as a method of warfare, and such action are not justified by any military necessity. Russia is providing deliberate attacks on civilian objects like schools, hospitals, residential buildings, and critical civilian infrastructure. We documenting using of human shield attacks on specially protected objects like nuclear power plants and dams. We documented also rape and other gender-based violence, deliberate killings, torture, and ill-treatment, enforced disappearances among civilians. Second, Russia deliberately isolated and blockaded Ukrainian cities, which has resulted in excursive suffering of civilians. The bright example is Mariupol. Russian troops don't let humanitarian assistance to reach the city, shelling on people who try to evacuate, destroyed the critical civilian infrastructure in the city, and people for weeks sat in bomb shelter without food, water, electricity, medical care. During all this time, Russia has agreed with the International Committee of Red Cross on only 2 single humanitarian corridors from Sumy in Berdyansk. Instead, Russia illegally moves hundreds of thousands of Ukraine to its territory. So all these actions they did deliberately in order to stop resistance of locals in these cities. And third, Russia started political persecution in occupied territories. And we received dozens of appeals from civil society activists and their relatives who have suffered from threats, physical violence, enforced disappearances, arbitrary detention, tortures, and other forms of persecution in Melitopol, Kherson, Berdyansk, Kakhovka, Slavutych, and other cities in settlements. Among them, local authorities, journalists, human rights defenders, religious leaders, volunteers, and civil societies activists. So when we speak about the Russian invasion in Ukraine, we speak about a huge number of crimes. When this war started in 2014, the duty to fight with an impunity in the armed conflict fell to the unprepared law enforcement and judicial system. And the situation was complicated by imperfect Ukrainian national legislation. We didn't comply with international humanitarian and international criminal law. So for current moment, we see several problems in order to proceed justice in these international crimes. The first problem is that Ukraine is still not ratified the Rome Statute of International Criminal Court. It's an international obligation of Ukraine under Article 8 of the Association Agreement with the EU. Either ratification was hampered by 3 years postponement of the entry into force of amendment to the Constitution of Ukraine, but this term expired in June 2019. But the Ukrainian president has not submitted a bill on ratification. However, on 2nd of March this year, the ICC prosecutor announced he had proceeded to open an investigation into the situation in Ukraine on the basis of the 2 declarations received from the government of Ukraine in 2014 and 2015 years. So now Ukraine are in a strange situation about which we warned Ukrainian authorities for all these years. For one hand, Ukraine has an obligation to cooperate with International Criminal Court on the basis of 2 declarations. But for the other hand, Ukraine has no rights, which a regular state party to the Rome Statute have. The second problem, that the current criminal code of Ukraine doesn't provide for liability for crimes against humanity, and war crimes are written in the form of an abstract blanket rule, which make it almost impossible to apply in practice. As a result, the article is virtually dead. Since the beginning of Russian aggression in 2014, only 4 convictions for whole 8 years have been handed down under Article 238 of the Criminal Court. The president of Ukraine still didn't sign the adopted by parliament in May last year draft IHL implementation bill. Instead of this, the new version of this bill was recently registered by Ukrainian government. And now we, with other human rights organizations, try to correct a number of shortcomings of this new bill, and some problem with Institute of Common Responsibility, Universal Jurisdiction, and the crime of aggression still remains. And the third problem, changes to the legislation will not have a desired effect without increasing the institutional capacity of state bodies. We have to remember that according to the policy, the International Criminal Court will focus on the top officials, so-called political and military leaders. This is in turn mean that bringing thousands of perpetrators of the international crimes to justice, it still remains Ukraine's responsibility. And our national system are not able to cope with the huge numbers of international crimes, because even before the large-scale Russian invasion started, Ukrainian national system had the problem of staff shortage, overloaded of criminal proceedings of investigative bodies and investigative units of police, We reported about lack of coordination between law enforcement agencies in general and within the bodies, understaffing of courts, unsatisfactory working and logistical conditions, as well as guarantees of safety and other practical needs. So war don't solve this problem. War makes this problem more sharp and crucial. That's why we have an idea that we need an assistance of international community in order to strengthen Ukrainian national ability to prosecute the international crimes and to bring perpetrators to justice. And we ask the international community stand behind Ukraine and the International Criminal Court to facilitate investigation and prosecution of those responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during Russian war against Ukraine, and also thinking about creation of international hybrid tribunal, which in addition to International Criminal Court will cover all international crimes which will be not selected by International Criminal Court. And since the International Criminal Court can't exercise its jurisdiction over the crimes of the aggression towards Ukraine, we ask international community to stand up for Ukraine's efforts to establish the special tribunal for the Russian aggression against Ukraine and take institutional decision to timely implement all these initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very enlightening. We appreciate what you've said. I think we should help you on most of those points that you point. We have another guest from Ukraine who wants to come over here. Okay, you started it. Okay. These are Ukrainians who are in Vienna, who are demonstrating and have been helping directly in Ukraine. So go ahead, Karolina Kompos. Yes? Yeah. Okay, so Chris, start the film and let her.
I think we can start with one of the videos. So what we are seeing here is the Russian soldiers that are taking money and products from the local supermarket. It's just as an evidence that you can find in any city of Ukraine. And then next video. So this is my home city, Kharkiv. This is my home city, Kharkiv. I come from Kharkiv, and I'm one of the lucky persons who could evacuate the family from these bombings. I just wanted to show you, and thank you to Mr. Platzer for inviting me so I can share my story. I just wanted to start with this video of bombings and to also show some of the documented war crimes that the Russian soldiers made. This is also one of the bombings that happened in Kharkiv when persons were waiting for humanitarian aid. Why is this also a war crime? Because they have special persons that correct artillery fire, and they know exactly that there are no military persons there. There are no soldiers. There are just people who wait for food and water. And this was also bombing in Kharkiv. As you can see, this is no military facility. This is just a normal house, and no military facilities nearby. And what I wanted to say is that war started for us in Kharkiv in 2014. As you probably know, a Russian flag was put on administrative building in Kharkiv in summer, and we were living with this fear for 8 years. And in February, 24th of February, our nightmare came true. We woke up to the news that our families are being bombed, and for 33 days we were living in this fear, trying to evacuate. But we saw the news and so many reports that these green corridors, as Ms. Matvichuk already mentioned, that they don't work, that they are being bombed. And we'll also have an acquaintance that informed us that her two daughters, 18 and 19 years, that they were trying to go through such a green corridor and their car was bombed. And although they had an inscription that they are civilians. And also this one video I wanted to show where the man shows killed family. I don't know if you can show the video now, because this is also a man who can witness. He is a witness that the Russians just shot down a convoy of civilians, where they have had inscriptions that these are civilians, that these are children. And he was helping this family to evacuate, mom, dad, and the children, and nothing helped. They just kept shooting. And he says here that he just wanted to help, but the woman was the only one just breathing after the shooting, and she died on his hands, and he had to bury them here alongside the road. And yeah, so we can see there are many witnesses, and as we already heard today, that many of them are traumatized, and we don't know who will be able to speak, but it is of course important that we bring people to do it now, because the more time passes, the more difficult it will be. So I thank you once more for this invitation to speak, and I hope that together with the international community, we can really make a change and bring these war criminals to have their punishment, and that justice will prevail. Thank you.
All right. All right. We really have gone through horrible moments just now. I would ask if anyone wants to make a comment at this stage of what we should do and when. I would just remind everyone the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice is meeting this week, and there are a number of high-level officials, and we can talk again to them. I spoke to the plenary about a half an hour ago. But I like some of the ideas that have been proposed. Does anyone want to follow up and propose a special thing that we could do? I think what was said, that we have people here like Carolina who have seen things, and we could certainly start a collection. There are other organizations who are helping Ukraine, but I think jurists can be just as helpful as doctors, nurses. Good.
Since unfortunately I have to leave in about 10 minutes, I would like to sum up. Yeah, the most important points we were just now presented, and we should really discuss. First of all, I think it's really important that the international community is taking all action that special tribunal will be set into force, but we know this would take a very, very long time. I think it's therefore necessary that we invite and push all European Union member states where Ukraine people are and refugees are actually living, to really try to get the necessary resources. And as I mentioned, academic and civil society organizations to interview these refugees, and ask them whether they witnesses any crimes in that regard, and to document it first of all. And these interviews could be forwarded to the authorities of the different European Union member states, because all the European Union member states are members of the ICC, and they have the obligation to undertake on the domestic level criminal procedures, and they are allowed to do so also if the perpetrators are not citizens of the state, to initiate criminal procedures based on international criminal law. That could be really a very important step. And as Alexandra mentioned, the ICC, according to its practice, is only starting investigations and procedures against the top responsible perpetrators, like maybe Putin and Lavrov, etc., and military generals, etc. But all the other perpetrators committing war crimes or crimes against humanity can be and have to be persecuted on the domestic level. And this is something we should really try to bring to the attention, not only to the Austrian Ministry of Justice, but also to try to invite other academic institutions and NGOs in other European Union member states to do it in the same way. And maybe the European Union Genocide Commission could be helpful in that regard, because they have a very good relationship to a lot of academic and NGO institutions, which maybe could do such actions, such projects. So this is my summary and my proposal, and I would be ready to write a short a written result from my point of view, and to hand it over to you and for further considerations.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to get a report, and perhaps Fritz will join.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hannes. And the important thing is first the documentation, the collecting the evidences, and afterwards finding a way to bring them to justice very soon. And how to do it in the member states, it could be a very interesting discussion too. It's not so easy, but I think it would be important to start with the first cases, perhaps before the war ends, because we don't know when it ends. We are hoping that it ends tomorrow, but if it lasts months, some months, then it could be important to show in the first cases that are evident that the international community, the member states of the ICC, They are starting their investigations. They are trying to bring people in front of the court. I bet there are some prisoners in the hands of the Ukrainians who committed war crimes, where we have evidences, and the question is how to start these. On the one hand, the investigations; on the other hand, the trials.
Thank you. Oksana,
May I shortly add here the proposal of the other Ukrainian lady? Sorry, I didn't got your name. There could be really also a very good idea to push ministers of justice from European Union member states to send specialized prosecutors to the Ukraine to support the Ukrainian prosecutor officers. Thank you.
that has been suggested and a number of countries are doing it. I don't know how many, 6 or 8 are doing it, but I think we need more. Yeah. But I think the question was actually addressed to Alexandra.
Thank you very much. Yes, some countries have already started this practice. For example, France sent France gendarmerie to work in Kiev region, in cities and settlements which were under occupation by Russian troops till 31 of March. And they included a very high-level specialist of DNA identification, which is highly needed because there are a lot of dead bodies of civilians in these regions, which were killed by Russian soldiers and tortured. And but the problem is that all such measures are temporary. And when we speak about documentation, then investigation, building legal cases, and strong legal position in the future courts, in national and I hope also international levels, it takes time. And that's why we are thinking about different possibilities how to permanently constantly involved of international elements into a level of national investigation or national justice. Because once again, even well-developed state bodies are not be able to cope with such enormous amount of international crimes which is committed by Russian troops. But we in Ukraine, as a national transit, never have a luxury to have a well-developed state institutions. Before this Russian scale large invasion, we have a problem with judiciary, we have a problem with law enforcement system. So we really need to find a way how to strengthen the capability and capacity of Ukrainian national system to deliver justice to the dozens of thousands of victims of war crimes.
Okay, again, I will go back to the UN Center tomorrow and I will take some of these ideas to both officials in the UN Center for Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice and see if they would move. But I think they need a driving state. And I would hope that Austria might be part of this coalition. We need a driver. And I think we also need the Ukrainian government to wish for this. I mean, they've been very quiet.
What is very interesting is what Alexandra said about traditionally in Ukraine before the war, that there were problems and not enough resources perhaps, and I don't know what was the situation about independence of judges and so on. And I remember today's discussion about the transitional justice after the Second World War, and the problem was in Austria and Germany that there were not enough judges, they had not enough resources to bring all the perpetrators in front of the court. And this could also, of course, be the problem in Ukraine, that there are not enough resources in Ukraine itself to bring people to court, to investigate, not enough prosecutors, not enough judges, and perhaps a system of judiciary which should be also improved.
Well,
Hannes Mr.
yeah. Hannes, are you leaving?
Yeah, he left.
Okay, but he's agreed to prepare a document which
Yeah,
we can look at. I will go back to the UN, and I would like to get the ambassador to agree to request such an assistance from the UN. That would be a lot easier than getting a resolution. But I think this discussion was very useful. It had many perspectives, but I think we need action. We need to get others involved, and we need to see the volunteers that we can find here. Also Ukrainian speakers. I mean, can't do this alone. And computer guys who will be able to receive all this information. You get an overload of everybody sending their handy films to the central. So I think there's a lot to do, and now it's the question of will. Do we want to spend the next months gathering materials and working on this? And so that's kind of a personal decision, but I think we should tell the international community that there is a small group which is now exploring the possibility of following up on these crimes. And if we can get the Minister of Justice of the Ukraine also to bless this project, I think we would be very much better off. So, anyone else? You want to speak?
Yeah, I'm quite sure that the judiciary in Ukraine needs help to cope with all these cases after the war, and also perhaps during the war. Depends on how long this war will last. Yeah, the discussion about transitional justice is a very important one, and there will be also the question if there could be a need of hybrid boards, panels with judges from Ukraine and judges from other countries dealing together with this amount of cases in Ukraine. But perhaps we can find out how there could be also trials in member states of the ICC, or how the ICC could start the investigations or improve the investigations. These are very important questions, and I think there is also a need that all these countries fight together against aggressors and find a possibility to show the aggressors that war doesn't pay, and not only it doesn't pay, but there will be justice afterwards, and we have to search for that.
I think we should let Sandra speak at the end. Can you sum up or what your feelings are and what you're ready to do with us?
If I may step in and with some concluding remarks, I think that we as Ukrainians have now several goals. The first goal is to survive, because unfortunately the hot stage of war is still going on. Russian troops are present in Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, the part of Zaporizhia and other regions of Ukraine. and the atrocities which we discussed during our event, unfortunately, still continue. So the first goal is how to find a way and united efforts of international community in order to stop a new war crimes to committed and to prevent a new victims of this possible war crimes to emerge. But now, even having exercised this urgent task, we need to think about future, about long horizon, and to discuss, invent, design, and then to establish the different possible methods, how to strengthen national system to investigate and to prosecute perpetrators of international crimes in this war. Because once again, we couldn't rely upon only on the International Criminal Court. According to his procedure, he will focus only on top officials and selected only several cases. And this call for justice from the dozens of thousands of victims has to be effectively managed. If not, this call for justice can be very easily transferred to the call for revenge. Thank you.
Thank you again. So I'm glad we met, and I hope we can continue talking like this, and we will keep you informed of our conversations with the whole Ukrainian government and our efforts to get allies in this cause. All right. I think we might have a kind of webinar, or at least an exchange every week or so, if possible. If you have time, I would certainly make time for this. This is my my first priority. So, good evening, and we'll call you again when we've had some more discussions in Vienna, and we'll certainly try to get our Minister of Justice. Thank you again.